For our last secret of the scales, we will look at the melodic minor mode. Now I've put the natural minor mode accidentals back on the scale again so we can compare to see how they relate one to the other. The interesting thing about the melodic minor mode is the only one of the scales, of the normal scales that we typically use, that are widely used, that is treated differently, ascending, than it is descending. So the long and short of it is, the descending scale is the natural minor scale, exactly, with the lowered 7th, 6th, and 3rd, just as you would encounter it if you were doing a natural minor scale. Ascending, however, there are two differences. The 7th and the 6th scale degrees are raised, or they're natural, they're as they would be if they were in major mode. So you have La and Ti, and then descending Te and Le. And this is an interesting thing. This inner working of the scale is interesting because rather than the half-step relationships are here and here, but then here and then back here as they were. So what is happening, it's not so much important to where the half-steps are, though that is still very important. The importance is the general direction of the melody as a melody approaches Do. For example, one reason the approach to Do by step, say Sol, La, Ti, Do, is so strong in the major mode. Let's get to the major mode here. Sol, La, Ti, Do is because you have intervals, large intervals. Sol, La, Ti, Do, and the small one right before Do, preparing that transition to Do. So there are large intervals and then the small interval. And so it's a very strong motion. It's the perfect fourth interval from the beginning to the end. Sol, Do, and that's one of the gestures. Remember the Sol, Do jump. And this is the Sol, Do stepping up. Sol, La, Ti, Do. It's a very great way to end a melody. Very strong position to end a melody. But going down, the very strength of the melody also becomes a little bit of a weakness when you're descending. Do, Ti, La, Sol. You still, even when you were descending, you have a feeling you want to kind of go back up. You want to go Do, Ti, La, Sol, Do, or Do, Ti, La, Sol, La, Ti, Do. You have a little bit of a push upward because of the proportions of these intervals, one to the other. So, ascending, going up, borrowing from the major mode, this is a very strong position. But going down, the melodic minor lowers the 7th and 6th scale degrees, basically turning this on its head. Now we have a whole step with a half step. And remember, this half step relationship, just like this one, drives the melody downward. Do, Te, Le, Sol. Do, Te, Le, Sol. So now there's a strong motion away from the melody, just as there was a strong motion away from Do, from the tonic, just as there was a strong motion toward it by having the notes raised toward it. Now the notes are kind of shrugging away from Do, making the motion away from Do very strong. So what happens in the melodic minor, the relationship between the relationship between Re and Me is similar to what you encountered in the other minor scales, but this is what is done most often, and the reason this is called melodic minor is because very often the melodies are written with these kinds of proportions in mind. And so let me write you a brief little melody here, and I'll sing it so you can hear how it's done. So if we are approaching, let's just imagine we're going Do, Sol, La, Ti, Do. We've made a very strong motion toward the tonic. We've established the tonic by dropping to Sol, to kind of the dominant feel, and stepping up strongly back up toward Do. But we want to move away from Do so we can explore some of the other parts. Do, Te, Le, sol. And now we can be down on sol really without shame, without feeling uncomfortable, because we've strongly moved down. The downward motion is very strong. But if we want to go back up to do, we can go ahead and raise sol, la, ti, do. So do, sol, la, ti, do, te, le, sol, la, ti, do. So if we're wanting to establish and de-establish to a certain extent do, so we can get away with it, we can drop the 7th and 6th scale degrees, treating it like the natural minor mode and allowing sol to have a little bit of a stronger position due to this half-step relationship. If we want to re-establish do with the half-step relationship, we can do it again right there when we ascend. Now, a little bit of a warning, because many of the melodies that I'm going to give you in the dictation assignments are going to be a little bit different. They're not going to conform strictly to this, so let me give you some of the exceptions of how we treat the melodic minor mode. The idea of when do we raise and then when do we drop, it's not only a question of is it going up or is it going down. The question is, what is the goal? So, for instance, and I'll go ahead and write this with a key signature this time. So take this brief melody. Do, ti, do, re, me, re, do. Why on earth did I raise the 7th scale degree? Because I was going down. It should be do, te, do, re, me, re, do. But imagine, what is the goal of this melody? Where were we going to? Was this really a melody whose goal was a descending line, or was this a melody whose goal was an ascending line? And I think we can say with some certainty that the purpose of this first half of the melody was to get back to do. Do, ti, do. So we could really say it was an ascending line. It was an ascending line. And this can go even further than that. We can go down even more. So, singing here. Do, ti, la, ti, do, re, me, re, do. So again, we were saying, well, we went down 2 steps here. Why did we raise the 7th and 6th scale degrees? But again, the goal was do. The goal was the tonic here. We can kind of erase that and think, la, ti, do. We were going down, but that was only so we would come back up. Now, if we were to go down a little bit more, where sol below is really the goal, then it would make much more sense to only raise it on the ascending portion. Do, te, le, sol, la, ti, do, re, me, re, do. So you can see here, it's obvious, the eventual goal, but a sub-goal, another goal, is to get to this sol here, all the way down, so we drop the 7th and 6th scale degrees or we don't do anything to them because the key signature already drops them here and here, and then we raise them as we come back up. So that is one of the secrets of treating the melodic minor scale, of course in a melodic minor, which is obvious given its name, but consider the goal, especially when you're doing your dictation assignments. Consider the goal of the melody. Was the purpose to get away from do, or was the purpose to reestablish do? And that will determine very often whether the raised or the lowered notes are used.